podcast with our host, Mark Anderson, Albert Zeha, and myself, George Apicano, and our very special guest on video feed, Scott Carson.
Hey, man. Hey, guys. I'm honored to be here today. Awesome. You guys are doing a great job. Keep up the good work.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, so Scott, we kind of normally start the show. What got you into real estate?
Tell us a little bit about it.
Tell us a little bit about what changed the mindset and got you going.
Yeah, so I was like many people back. I graduated from college here south of. I'm in Austin, Texas, so it's a pretty competitive market. So I graduated college in 2001, went to work. I grew up in South Texas, and my parents owned the local hardware store. So on the weekends, I would say I was the indentured servitude of digging ditches and, mowing yards and doing whatever I could with the different contractors and things like that. So kind of learned real estate with my hands-on hammer and nail kind of approach aspect of things. But after I graduated college, and me and my ex-wife or wife at the time got settled down, we bought our first house. And then, of course, our realtor was like, hey, it's a great time to buy real estate. This is going back to 2002. You thought about being investors, like, oh yeah, I can fix everything. I'm like Scott the Tool Man. And my wife's favorite show at the time was that fictional show, Flip This House, where everything is accurate on there. And so we set about, after we bought our first house, we bought 2 more investment properties here on the north side of Austin in a place called Round Rock, Texas, where a computer company that rhymes with hell, Dell, or some people would say they work at hell, but anyway, was there, and we were going to be landlords, So we, did the work, got 100% financing, 3 first mortgages, 3 second mortgages with our primary and our 2. And about 2 months into getting those leased up, I got laid off from my job. They literally closed the location. And then Dell did some massive layoffs, and our tenants became deadbeat tenants. You know how that goes. The whole,
Right.
And so I make the joke that I was a deadbeat borrower myself because we were making 6 mortgage payments, 3 first, 3 seconds on a private school teacher salary.
Ooh.
So lucky for us, we were able to get rid of the 2 investment properties. We had a couple investors step in, and I was doing whatever I could to get to work, to make money. We saved our primary residence. We did a loan mod. We were able to stay into it. Fast forward about a year later, I'd gotten back into banking and finance, and was doing really well, making money. And a buddy of mine that I worked with beforehand said, hey, I'm starting a mortgage company and starting to travel the country and going to all these expos and big conventions as the big mortgage broker. Do you want to join on? And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So I met him and a couple of his business partners that were traveling the country teaching owner financing and creative stuff and wraparounds and subject to and options. And I said, this is what I want to do. And so for the next couple of years, every other weekend I was on a plane at a different event learning. So I had a really great 4-year stretch where I was like an apprentice. We were doing mortgages, from 2004 to 2008, but I was also learning options and subject to deals and door knocking and short sales, and started to really implement and do real estate investing in a lot of the ways that are smart versus going out and just getting a traditional mortgage and being a 30-year fix. So that's kind of what got me into real estate investing. And then we all know what happened in 2008, for the market bomb.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I sold my half of the mortgage company to my buddy for $1 and jumped on the note side, started dialing for dollars and started contacting the banks and asset managers at the banks that I've been originating notes from, started to buy some of their bad debt. And for the last 12 plus years, that's basically all that I've kind of focused on, is the non-performing debt side of real estate investing. Very small niche, but very profitable aspect of really becoming the bank and buying debt from banks and hedge funds, and then working to, as I say, make America great again, one defaulted borrower at a time.
That's outstanding. So in the mortgage crisis, right, you said that you were already figuring out some ways of creative financing. So what brought about the note? Like, how did that click in your mind when you're like, hey, you know what, I can be the bank?
That's a great question. The sponsoring broker, one of the real estate investors, had been had non-performing debt back in the 80s during the RTC days, the Resolution Trust Corporations, the savings and loan scandals, and made a lot of money during that crisis. And then when everything happened, I've been learning this creative financing of subject twos and wraparound mortgages, and then owner financing notes and selling the notes at the closing table to another fund like Boston Note or Aegis Mortgage and stuff like that. And so when everything hit the fan, not only did he say, Scott, this is the ideal time to jump back into the note business or get your feet wet in the note business, I had another investor that it was a private money lender of mine here in Austin that was lending me money, and he'd made a lot of money there. He's like, oh my gosh. He goes, I'm going away from the financing properties to just buying debt, buying the mortgage. And so when I had two of my mentors really, I was like, well, okay, let's do this. There's, and here in Austin, we had a pretty good stable market. We didn't see a lot of decline like other parts of the country, like you guys out there.
Yeah,
Right.
In Phoenix.
Have a big one.
Yeah.
But we still had short sales. We still had 900 foreclosures a month taking place here. And so I just saw the opportunity. So I just started dialing for dollars. I said, well, what else is going to hurt me? I got two investment properties that I'm upside down on.
Yeah.
A couple of things I thought would be good that were worth 300 when I bought them, and 6 months later they're worth less than what I paid for them because of foreclosures. So I literally just went gung ho, and would start making 50 to 100 phone calls a day calling banks, and I would get a lot of no's. But the first 2 days I made 54 phone calls, and I got one yes from a fund that led to me buying, or really kind of helping put together a $5 million portfolio of loans in Houston that we made 5 points on. So it was a nice pay. $250,000 that I split with a couple buddies of mine because we, each had a piece and put it together. Right. But I was like, $50,000 for 50 no's. I'll take $1,000 per no and just kind of work it. And so that's just kind of what I did. Is this going back before, a lot of the new social media, a lot of new websites out there. I just literally was doing that, dialing for dollars and to get funding because I didn't have a lot of capital myself. I would just post the deals and what I was doing on Facebook and LinkedIn, and people are like, how are you buying that deal? How are you getting such a great deal? Where are you finding this stuff? And I was like, well, these banks just are falling over themselves with lists, and they want to get it off their books as fast as they can. And so it was just kind of a cool thing that way. So that's kind of really what it dove me into the business. 2008, 2010 I was here in Austin doing that. I gotten divorced, a new business partner that went a different direction. And so what really kind of led to the biggest thing was, I'm a baseball fan. As we have baseball coming, I know you guys have, spring out there with all the cactus going on, right? I'm a big baseball fan, so I was like, well, what would it be like to plan going to all these Major League Baseball parks? Sitting at home on a March day like today and watching TV, and they have all those Visa commercials, like $7 for a hot dog, $8 for a beer, visiting every ballpark with your son, priceless. And I'm like, well, people have always told me if I had to go write it down. So I pulled up ESPN.com. I started planning what it would take. Like, it's down to the day. Okay, if I'm here in Austin, I'll go up to Dallas for opening day and catch the Rangers, and go down to Houston the next day and catch a game. Kind of do that. Yeah. Planned out like this 30-week trip. Well, I've been already sharing on social media and writing blogs about what I was doing in the note business, that over the next couple of weeks, divine intervention kicked in, and I started having different real estate investment clubs reach out to me and ask me if I wanted to come speak at their club. I'm like, okay, I hadn't thought about this. And I'm like, when? And the days they wanted me to come lined up almost exactly perfectly when I'd be in that town for this fictional baseball.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, okay, time to do it. So I sold my last house in Austin. I had a garage sale, sold everything except my truck and my dog. And the truck I'd actually bought on a note and repossessed it as well. And
awesome.
What we thought would be 30 weeks turned into 3.5 years of nonstop travel. And that's kind of what led me to becoming what they call the note guy, where I'm buying and selling debt, and one of the few people in the real estate niche that teach us on a regular basis.
So can you explain for those that are not familiar with note buying, like what's the process? Like, what are you actually doing?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. I'm glad you answered that, because that's a big question. So what I'm doing is I'm buying the mortgage, and that's when, and then I become the bank. So we've all probably bought a house, got a mortgage, and like 30 days later, a letter shows up in the mail. Hey, thanks, your mortgage has been sold from ABC Bank to Chase Bank, or something like that.
Yes.
We in the mortgage industry, that happens all the time. It also happens when banks have bad debt. When they have loans where borrowers haven't been paying on 6 weeks to 6 months or 6 years on a deal that I just saw today. And so on this distressed debt where a borrower hasn't paid in at least 6 months, the bank is willing to discount the note to a note investor to come and buy what they owe at a discount. And then me buying that note, I become the bank. I have all the same rights to the bank. And then I make my money and my profits by then really reaching out to the homeowner and saying, okay, what happened? You know, what country western song did you go through? You know, did you go through a divorce? Did you get sick? Did you get laid off? Did your dog died? Did grandma get run over by a reindeer? You know, all that stuff. What's the issue? I know you're 6 months behind and you don't have 6 months of payments like the previous bank wanted you to pay, but with me, you don't have to come all the way to the table. If you can bring a little bit of money to the table, or can you start paying again because you're working? You know, the fact that I buy that debt at usually a substantial discount gives me a lot of flexibility to kind of, you know, create a win-win scenario where, like, okay, you owe $6,000 in back payments. I know you don't have that. Do you have $1,000? You got $1,000? Can you start making existing payments? Okay. Because if they got like a 6% interest rate and I bought that note at 50% of what's owed, even if they owe exactly what the house is worth, that's like a 12% cash and cash return because I bought it at 50. They still owe the full amount, you know. And so that's kind of what we get. That's what we focus on doing, is we focus on basically trying to become, you know, we do become the bank and try to get them back on time and paying again. You know?
Wow.
So then are these notes, these non-performing notes, is there a time frame that you start looking at them? So say, for example, you know, they purchase a home a year, 24 months, 5 years down the road. Is there a time frame that you're looking at when they stop performing and then that you acquire them? Or
I don't want to really look at anything that's less than 120 days late, because the banks usually still want too much. If it's, you know, less than 90 days, like they'll want 70, 75, 80% of what's owed. And I like bigger discounts. And the fact is too, we're usually looking at portfolios. It may be 5 assets or it could be 500 that we get a cherry pick from. So some of these portfolios we get, the borrower hasn't paid in 6 months or a year or like 6 years. And so the bank is willing to take a big discount because they'd rather get something in.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
You know?
Yeah, exactly. And then they can re-lend that money out, leverage it 10 to 15 times to make up their loss.
Yeah.
That way I come in, hey, the asset may be worth $100,000. They may owe 110 because they're behind a few months. I pay 50 grand for that debt. I guess if I can get them to start paying on time by doing a loan mod or a forbearance agreement, great. It's a good return. If they pay on time, if I can get them going on time for 6 to 12 months, I can then resell that note back to on the market as a performing note again for 80 to 90 cents in the dollar. So I made 30 to 40 cents in the middle. If they won't play ball with me, you know, if they're just going to be an ass, you know, tell my team to F off or fight foreclosure, we'll just go ahead and foreclose and then take the property back either that way or sell it to foreclosure auction or offer, you know, deed in lieu, cash for keys to walk, or, you know, offer a short sale. You know, if they want to do that, they owe more than what the property's worth. So we got a whole variety of ways that we're making money.
Wow.
But it's like with anything else. You make your money on the buy. You just don't realize it till you sell it.
So you sell it, right?
Exactly. And do you guys tend to get a lot of those that say, nah, we're not interested in helping you? Or
it just depends. Are you talking about the borrowers or are you talking about the banks?
the borrowers? The borrowers.
Borrowers. Okay.
You bought the note and you give them a call. I mean, I'm sure are you making the calls? You have a team? Yeah, right? You have a team.
Yeah, there's a team. And what's the beautiful thing is there's servicing companies and vendors out here that do that. I don't recommend people do this on their own because you're going to run into a lot of trouble. You need to have third-party servicers and things like that. There's companies that do this, attorneys that will handle this. You know, we've got a team. We've built a team, but most people like, hey, you hire a servicing company. They're the one that's collecting the payments. They're the one that's sending the statements out. They're the ones making 4 to 5 phone calls throughout the week to try to get the borrower back on the phone. And you know, we like to target owner-occupied assets versus vacant property. It's a little bit different mindset because we're a bank. So if we get it and they're occupied, there's more opportunity to make money with exit strategies for them to stay in the house and modify. If it's a vacant property, we know we're going to have to probably foreclose, or it's going to need some work with like either the air conditioning going on vacation or, you know, the copper goblins showing up. You guys are familiar with that out there in Arizona, right?
Heard of that, yes.
So do you get a lot of questions? Do you get a lot of wholesalers calling you for these properties?
We do get some wholesalers. The thing about, I mean, you can wholesale a note just like you wholesale a piece of property. I mean, I love your guys' website. It's kind of what attracted me originally when I reached out to Mark, because I saw the one deal you had, I think is selling at $379 and worth $499. And that's a great wholesale deal for somebody out there. What it's different is that people don't understand that they're not necessarily getting the property when they're buying.
Oh, you're right. They're just getting the note. Yeah.
You got to still go through the legal proceeding. They still got to go through foreclosures, that kind of stuff, to take the property back or offer like a cash for keys or deed in lieu or stuff like that.
That's right.
But if the numbers work.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was seeing all sorts. I mean, if I could go back in time, the biggest mistake I didn't do 10 years ago was buy more.
Okay, yeah.
You know, with the markets improving like they have over the last 10 years, you know, you guys, you know, there was 14,000 REOs. I mean, we were seeing banks in Arizona just begging for us to buy anything. Same thing in Florida and Nevada.
Yeah,
You know?
those 3 states. Yeah, I know, right?
Crazy time. I mean, I think
Yeah.
we're going to have something like that happen again, maybe just not as extreme because we've
Yeah.
been, I mean,
It'll
you guys
correct
have seen it with the markets just coming back and doing well.
Right.
Yep. So is wholesaling notes part of your strategy as well? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
we, you know, we'll get a portfolio in. Like I'm looking at a portfolio of 468 assets right now, and we'll probably take down 70 to 75 of those assets ourselves. We've got people that are looking for notes as well, so we may wholesale off 3, 5, you know, notes here and there to other people that understand it. You know, make a little bit of wholesaling fee on something.
Yeah.
The beauty is that since we're buying, say, 90 versus 70, we get a little bit better discount across the board because we're buying in bulk versus so we just going out and buying 5.
Yeah.
The scariest assets and be the most expensive may not be that big a discount.
Gotcha. Okay.
The nice thing too is we're not dealing. I've done wholesaling, I've done fix and flipping, I've done
Okay.
postcards, door knocking. I mean, I've been shot at 3 times door knocking before. Okay, that was in Gary, Indiana, in Detroit, but not in Phoenix.
Nice. So you know how rough it is.
Oh yeah. Grandma pulled out a double barrel shotgun. You're not gonna steal my house, you know.
Right. You're not coming. Yep.
I once got almost arrested out in your guys' neck of the woods. There at in Camelback.
Yeah.
There was a community that First Magnus had a mortgage on, like 27 homes. It was a gated community up there, and the builder had gotten all the borrowers to go out and get individual construction loans, and they took 95% of the payouts, and then she left. And so these houses were like 90% of the way done. You could literally see like a ghost town, you know. And I had an investor that brought me out there, and I had to jump a fence to go walk around. So I like walking around taking like addresses so I can go back and track this down and track the bank. And these 2 cops pull up to me because I'm like literally walking into each house and walking in, almost done, immaculate, you know, $750,000 loans on each of these things. And the cops pull like, "What are you doing?" I'm like wearing a suit. I'm like looking around for my investor, and the minute she saw the cop show up, she took off and left my ass. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm an investor. You know, I'm obviously not stealing. I'm in a suit. You know, I'm walking around here, just coming from a meeting with a different bank there in Phoenix." And I'm like, I hand him my card, and he's like, "Oh, what are you trying to do?" I was like, "Well, I'm just trying to go around and get the specific street addresses and numbers, so then I can pull up." Sending to my, you know, due diligence team to check out what's owed and try to work out with the bank. And they're like, "Oh, jump in." So I jumped to the back of their squad car, and they're driving me around real fast there. And I said, "Can you do me a favor?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "Can you arrest me? Can you put handcuffs on me? And then when we'll show up at my investor's house and do the same thing." So they were like, "Oh yeah, good stuff." So they pseudo arrest me, pull up my investor's house. She's like, "Oh my God," pull me out, and I'm walking up there. I'm like, "Surprise!" But that was give you an example. That was it was a $20 million basically loan package that sold for $4 million.
Wow.
And it was a bankruptcy deal that sold for $4 million in bankruptcy court because they bought the note. A builder went in then and redid everything, and ended up selling it for roughly somewhere around 12 to 13 million on the net on that stuff.
At the end of everything. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of newbies, you know, new investors on here. So if a person wanted to go, you know what, because real estate, right? You can go all kinds of different directions in regards to it. But if they wanted to go into notes specifically, what would you recommend, like how they could go about getting into it, right? And how you know, do they have to raise capital? What are the steps that you think would be best for somebody starting off?
So that's a really good question. I don't think everybody should just jump in. It's not the same thing as going to a wholesaling course or going to a weekend summit or something like that and say, "Hey, I'm going to be a note investor." You're not going to walk into Chase Bank or Bank of America and say, "I want to buy your notes." They'll call the cops on you. All right.
Mm-hmm.
You need to get educated. It's a different mindset. There's a ton of videos online, YouTube, but we've got about 1,000 videos on there. Our podcast, we do a lot. We dive into it, and the podcast name is the Note Closure Show. But best thing is to get educated. Okay. No matter if you're brand new, get educated. Go to your local REIA clubs. You know, jump online, listen to these guys' podcasts. And by the way, go over and make sure you subscribe and leave a 5-star review for these guys. They're doing a great job with their show. But just get educated, learn it. spend some time, there are some websites that you can start looking at note deals. There's not like a true note MLS, but there are some different platforms out there that have some deals available that you can take a look at and start working through and talking to people. I mean, you're going to learn the most from pulling the trigger first and foremost, but let's get you educated so you're not pulling the trigger on something that you should never bought. We want you to do a deal, not a dud.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure when the crash happened, you were able to buy all these notes and everything, but you said you've been doing it already for quite a bit, 12 years. So has that part of the real estate continued to stay, level? Has it gone down a lot?
It's a good question. So this all started back, I mean, it was basically a very niche. We all that were in the industry were like saying, oh, it's, this is a true secondary market. It just sprung up with all these vendors that follow that aspect. I mean, notes have been around for, centuries and centuries, IOUs. I mean, we're all in the note game, whether you've got a mortgage, a student loan, credit card debt, you're just on the wrong side of the payment stream. Okay. But as we all, like I said, we were all thinking it was going to be just a 3 to 5 year period, and then it'd be rebound and go from there. Well, we're still buying notes. There's not as much inventory. I mean, in 2010, the market peaked at having 15 million homeowners underwater that owed more on their mortgage than what it's worth. We had default rates up at 8%. These days, the national default rates is somewhere between 2 to 2.5 to 3%, just varies on what you're talking about. And values have come back. So as values have come back, the deals have dwindled down a little bit, but there's still a lot of origination. And if we see a 2% default rate on all the origination, that's still a lot of mortgages that you can pick up. Commercial notes defaults have increased. We see that. You're not gonna. There's different parts of the country that rebounded stronger than others, but you're still going to see stuff. I mean, we don't buy anything in California because it's the land of fruits and nuts, and it's just the drops are just some nuts up there now. The banks want like 95 cents on the dollar, and that doesn't make sense.
Well, everybody's leaving California now too. Like they're coming here, they're going to Florida, things like that.
They're going there to you guys. I mean, if California sneezes, you guys catch a cold, or they're coming here to Texas. I mean, Texas is the number one relocation spot, and we want to sit in the back, but I've had to change the markets I buy in because markets change. I used to buy a lot in Florida, or is what I used to call God's waiting room. You guys are familiar out there, Sun City and all the retirees out there. Right. And so I used to buy stuff a lot cheaper then, because they had a longer foreclosure period. It'd take like 18 months to foreclose in Florida. So the longer foreclosure time frame, the bigger discounts I get.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you guys are pretty fast foreclosures there in Arizona now. Same thing here in Texas. So I don't buy a lot of stuff in these markets. I mean, still do, but it's just not like it used to be. I'm buying in a lot of, Ohio, Michigan, 250 in Michigan. I can buy a whole block versus just like one property in other places.
Yeah, correct. Right.
So it's all about knowing the market's expanding. I always tell people, like, listen, if you're going to look at something, start in like 2 states, get to know those states because each state's foreclosure laws and timeframes are a little bit different, and work your way up into doing stuff. But with the beautiful thing of today, with so much social media and media groups and real estate clubs across the country, you're just a couple clicks away from having somebody help you out with due diligence or put eyes on a property. Or and you never know too. Some of the deals that we have seen have just boggled my mind on what the borrowers do for a living or what they did or didn't do.
I bet. So when you first started off, did you have any issues raising capital? Right, because I'm assuming you have to partner up with investors. If you're starting off, you don't have any money to buy these notes, and especially if you come up with a bulk buy, right? How were some of those challenges that you had? How'd you overcome those in the early days?
That's a good question. So I started off wholesaling, just a few here and there until I made some money. But then what I did is just like anybody else. I went out and networked. I literally went out to real estate clubs, and I discovered some self-directed IRA companies that were hosting events. So I would go out there and I would get up. Anybody say, have a deal? Like, yeah, I got a deal. Here's a deal I got. I started sending an email blast out once a week to my network and posting on social media. Hey, if you guys are looking for some deals or looking to put your lazy assets to work, here you go. Is your CD a certificate of disappointment?
That's a good one.
I love it.
Is your 401k now a 101k? Are you getting a higher rate of return from just burying the money and putting it in the ground? We can help. So I literally just started emailing. And then another thing that helped me out tremendously is I gotten divorced. I was single, gotten rid of everything. So it was the nice going out and actually networking with people in local markets. I was seeing lists from all across the country that I couldn't possibly buy at all. And I couldn't take the time to jump on a plane and go look at every asset too. So I literally went out and started, going around and meeting with people and teaching people how I did what I did. The biggest thing, people like, how do you find these assets? So one day I jumped online and recorded a video of me calling banks for like 3.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And getting hung up on, or the conversations that would happen back and forth with that. And so I just started documenting little things, and that helped people like, oh, hey, this guy actually knows what the hell he's doing, even though he looks like he's sweating his ass off in 105th Street. And that led, the deals. I was like, listen, I'm buying this at 50 cents on the dollar. I'm buying a 12-unit apartment complex in San Diego. It was worth $800. I could pick it up for like $375. Fully occupied. If you just take it over, there's 200, 300 grand in instant profits there. You flipped it to somebody else if you had to foreclose. And so I would make money that way, and just started showing people, a lot of people are scared to pull the trigger when it comes to invest their money. They would rather learn what you're doing, but then they often are too lazy and don't want to do the things that need to be done. They don't want to hustle. They'd rather write a check and make a decent ROI.
Yeah. Now, a lot of these notes, like you said, like just an example, like the one that you said, the one in California, the Fort Plate or whatever. Do you ever, or did you ever take any of these properties down yourself?
Oh yeah, I took quite a few down and kept for myself.
Nice.
I bought a lot in Miami Beach. I bought a lot of condos for $5 grand, $10 grand here, because they were that's the first place to go. In a foreclosure, your condo market's always going to hurt first, but it's also going to be one of the first that rebound back. So I bought a lot of stuff cheap, took it to foreclosure, kept it for a little while, and then it took like 18 months to foreclose. So by the time the values started to rebound back, I didn't care if it took 18 months.
Yeah,
the values would go from 30 cents on the dollar now back to 60, 70 cents on the dollar, and it would make sense to foreclose or keep as rentals if I need to for a little while until the market rebounded back and from there. So yeah, I mean, I bought some apartment complexes we held for a while. We regentrified, got the rents back up, and then resold them all off. And I still have got a portfolio of about 400 notes that we have from all across the country that are in some sort of performing, non-performing. They turn into rentals or stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, good cash flow there too.
It's decent. I'm not going to complain. It's decent. Every month is different. We have some people that perform, other people we sell off. I mean, I have a deal right now in Miami that the guy's doing a short sale on, and I'm like, I'm fine with that. We'll forgive you $5 grand because it needs some work, so you can sell the house and get out from underneath of it. It needs about 35 grand worth of work. It'll be worth 160. I bought the note 4 years ago for like 10 grand. And I'm like, okay, I'll take 75.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
So
well, it's not as extreme as that used to be. On average, we're probably paying some around 50 to 55 cents of as is value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Making sure it still owe more. And we still find some sweet spots. It just comes from where a lot of people have kind of come over into the note space, into the dark side or the sexy side of real estate. Because they can't find REOs at priced out anymore. They're tired. They're lazy landlords that don't want to deal with toilet sinks and trash shows. They'd rather deal with the passivity of performing notes, which is a great model. Or they're trying to catch up and buy non-performing where they get some of those big returns. I mean, it takes a team more than anything else. And you guys know this. You're going to fix and flip houses. You need a team. You don't want to be the person doing all yourself. So I couldn't do what I do without our team of vendors like our servicers or our attorneys, and of course our local realtor relationships and things like that too that help us out. They're my eyes and ears on the ground.
Yeah. Boots on the ground.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, like, do you go and actually? So I mean, obviously you came over here in Arizona to acquire an asset. Do you still do that now? I mean, every single property you're looking at, every single note that you're
that'd be tough.
I couldn't do that. I mean,
right.
I love Austin because I'm 2.5 hours away from 90% of the country on Southwest Airlines if I need to be. But I only really will jump on a plane and go look at stuff if it's going to be like a cluster. Like last summer, I flew to Michigan. We were looking at buying 30 notes from a fund, and I already owned like 15 up there. So we spent a day and drove around and 3 days and drove around and look at 45 assets in 3 days. And that helped us out with that as well. But in other areas, like if I bought a portfolio last summer, 67 notes that was in 12 states. There's no way to do it. So I reached out to our realtor network. I reached out to my students. I reached out to, for those I couldn't find places, there's, BPO companies go out and pull a BPO for me or drive by and take a look and then report back. So, yeah.
Now you just mentioned students. Are you also mentoring then?
Yeah, that's the one way that I was able to raise capital to really help me buy more deals because there's so much inventory out there. As I started teaching back in 2011, because I was like, I can't buy all this stuff. I got, there's plenty of deals to go around. There still is. And so, yeah, I teach people. I teach a workshop 3-4 times a year. Right. We do, and that's what we started the podcast. We teach a lot of people through our podcast episodes. We dive into a nugget here and there on something specific. Like I did an episode that came out yesterday on the Texas markets and where to find notes there. And, we sprinkle in motivation and business, business lessons and things like that along with, okay, what's a performing note? How do you evaluate a performing note? How do you do your due diligence? How do you raise capital, all that kind of stuff? Because there's a lot of moving parts. You guys know this.
Yeah.
So you got to divide and conquer the content. Yep. And that's what I've been doing. So
nice, man. That's really good. So what 13 years you said?
13 years. Yeah. It's hard to believe.
No, exactly.
Craziness. And the funny thing is I've got buddies that are in the mortgage business and they're telling me some of these things. Like I was on a phone call with a guy up in New York who's a kind of high up in the evil empire, Bank of America. And he's telling me like get this is the craziest stuff on originations, new originations. They're donating the FHA down payment, donating, and then they're also contributing $7,500 towards closing costs. Wow. It's 100% financing, and they're doing this as low as like 580 FICOs.
They're asking for it.
Yeah.
They're asking for it. I'm like salivating over here like, when's it going to happen? When is it down? The Fed cut rates by 0.5 point today. I'm like, we're trying to offset the coronavirus. So I'll drink Corona beers all day long and doing stuff like this.
So, and that's good thing that you segued into that. So right, the market had like a $4,000 point drop last week, right? So how does that impact notes on your end? I mean, does it impact you, or is it a buying opportunity, selling opportunity, anything?
We don't really get bogged down into the day in, day out market immediately. Something like that, that's too knee-jerk reaction. I mean, obviously, if you've got a portfolio and your stock price drops, you're kind of crap, and people that are getting laid off, that's what affects us more than anything else. Is that when we start seeing things like that, those are kind of big, I guess you could say key KPIs. We look at key performance indicators of a market. If default rates are up, like I'll give you an example. Houston, Texas, the armpit of the coastal bend. Okay, I know I'm not a fan of Houston, but when the hurricane hit, it laid a lot of people off. A lot of people lost their, got their houses washed out. People had to fix it. They were out of work. We see a change 6 to 12 months later, really, when the banks get tired of being nice, and now they've got to start collecting. Then they start foreclosing, or people aren't back to work and can't pay that stuff off. I mean, here's a statistic there's two statistics. One, 87% of people, if they miss one paycheck, they're behind. They have no savings. All right. So the coronavirus, if their people aren't working because they're, that's going to affect. They don't have food. They don't have stuff to pay the bills. Where are they going to pay them? Chase, or they're going to pay for food? They're going to pay Grubhub. Okay. But there's another thing that scares you. It should be scared. This is the thing that is 1 in 10 Americans are 30 days behind on their mortgage already. Wow. 1 out of 10 Americans are already at least 30 days late. And, it's a variety of factors that cause that. And so I see a downturn. I mean, the market can't keep going up and going up. It's got to change. We're 4 years past, an average increase in the market is supposed to be 7 to 8 years. We're 4 years past that. So it's got to come down at some point. And so who knows what happens if we have this pandemic and people get laid off, or jobs closings, or a trade war with China cuts back, makes it more expensive for your iPhone. You're paying $1,200 versus $900, or, there's a lot of things that go into it. We're always like a 6 month later kind of thing. Okay, we'll start really seeing things that trickle back to us after the banks and then the government come up with their programs. Then those programs go away and people are hurting again. And that's when we step in and
Right.
Look, we try to keep people in their houses. If they want to stay, we try to work out something, but you no pay, you no stay. All right?
So where's your mindset when things like that start to unfold, like a massive recession like 2018?
So what my mindset is, okay, let's make sure that we're usually doing it 6 to 12 months ahead of time. Like we've been in a big liquidation period. Any properties that we took back that we've held on to, we've sold off. You know, let's get rid of it because we've capped out. Okay, if it goes up another 5%, whoopee freaking doo-dah. We're way up. We're in the,
Yeah.
you know, let's not sit here and wait for that extra 5% when we're up 90. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Making sure that we've got always increasing our marketing for raising capital for people, because that's when the opportunity, when those markets have a tendency to hit like that, that's a buying opportunity. Unfortunately, most people buy at the top because they want to get in them, but they're too late. They're overpaying, and that leads to a lot of opportunities for people coming and buy more on the back end. So that's we track foreclosure rates, default rates, job loss in different markets when a major employer goes out of business. That we can track that stuff as well too, and that leads to if somebody like a ConocoPhillips a few years ago in Houston laid a lot of people off. Well, a lot of those people had really big 401ks that they were able to roll over into IRAs. That's an investment opportunity. Hey, you're not working, you're retired. You want to put your hard work money to work. Invest in something or passively, or worst case, you want to learn how to do it. We'll teach you how to do it.
Yep.
Nice.
That is awesome. Yeah, that's great.
So basically you're just hunting for tragedies. So.
Yes, I'm a deal junkie, just like you guys are. I'm a shark.
It's a joke.
I've been called anywhere from an angel to the devil. Depends on who you're on the other line from.
No. So question. So when Detroit had their auto plants, right, closing down, and right, it's still not 100% recovered, right? There are some investors that are going in there. It's starting to work. What did you notice? Like when you first started hearing that these auto manufacturers were going out? I just kind of want to see what the mindset that you had when that first happened.
So I got a portfolio. When all that stuff started happening, I got a portfolio. I start reaching out to banks that are lending in those areas. Okay, so like I can track who lends in Michigan. I can pull a list of who's lending in Michigan, who has offices in Michigan, and start reaching out to their internal departments. The departments that handle the note sales aren't customer service or loss. It's the special assets department, the secondary marketing department. So I start reaching out to those contacts. And when they start sending you the list, you start seeing an uptick in lists. You're like, okay, thank you. I'm not ready to buy. I'll call you back in 30 days or 60 days. Because usually it gets cheaper the longer they have it on the list. Okay. So back over a decade ago, I got a listing from Doral Bank. Okay. No, Banco Popular. Sorry, Banco Popular.
Mm-hmm.
Big bank out of Puerto Rico. They had a big portfolio up there. They were selling homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, like 1960s, 1970s, but like 1,500 square foot. I was buying houses for $1,500. Okay. I paid for one on a debit card. I paid $500 for this one. It needed some work, and I sold it for scrap metal for $1,500 the next day. Okay. You see, there's a lot of opportunity. I had a buddy of mine who's got some money from over in Shanghai. He is a crazy rich Asian. And his family came in and bought 800, a whole big portfolio from a bank, ridiculous cheap, like 2-3 cents on the dollar. And their whole goal was like, hey, market rent would still be $500 or more. Let's just buy these and turn these into rentals. It took them 6 to 12 months to do a lot of work out with the homeowners on a case-by-case basis, but there's still opportunity for something like that. So Michigan, people get scared of Michigan. I love Michigan. I think it's a smart market. Detroit is a great market. There are some rough areas, where M&M and 8 Mile is. Can still be rough.
Right. Flint water.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Flint water, they literally will bring water out to the houses. So I actually own about a dozen properties in Flint that are all performing that I was able to buy at a discount. So here's the thing. Banks will sometimes get scared, and you can use that scare tactic to get a better discount and a bigger deal. We've got
I'm liking that.
There's a bank in San Antonio, local bank. I'm not going to name any names in San Antonio. They had a lending program that was subprime back a couple years ago. 2 years ago, they had a portfolio that was subprime, like 65 borrowers, and all these people lived in like a 2-mile radius of the bank. And half of the borrowers were in default. Well, the bank did not want to be the bad guy foreclosing because these people would show up at their house or their bank and egg them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So they were like, hey, we were selling the whole portfolio. And they sold the portfolio at literally, it was ridiculously 45 cents of what was owed. Most of the borrowers had quite a bit of equity because they'd been there for 5 or 10 years. 2/3 of the portfolio was performing.
Oh, wow.
And they just wanted to get rid of the portfolio so that they didn't have to be the bad guy.
Wow.
You know, so it was a $1.1 million trade. Right out the gates, we were making a 17-18% cash and cash return just off the performing stuff.
Wow.
You know, and then we reached out to the homeowners, and you know, they had money. They were just trying to make ends meet. So we worked and negotiated with those people, and we're able to rock and roll and help them out. So
Wow, that's awesome.
That is
That is really good.
That's slow clap worthy.
hang on a second. There you go. Thank you very much.
No, that's
getting sound effects.
That's the thing for every bad borrower that's calling us to F off and all that stuff. Like, you're not going to take my house. Like, hey, we're trying to help you.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people that really just, you know, they hit the skids for no reason of their own. You know, life happens.
Yeah.
And,
right.
and like I bought a note on a lady in Illinois, and she'd been trying to do a loan mod for 4 years. 4 freaking years. Her loan file was literally like 2 foot tall from all the short sale paperwork that she faxed in and loan mod docs, and it'd been sold. And so like when I get this, I'm like, okay, here's a lady that wants to stay. And she'd lived in the house for 18 years, her and her husband, they'd raised their 2 kids. It wasn't a huge house. You know, they owed 120 on their, you know, the rise up before 2008. They took out a cash out refi to pay medical bills because he had a heart attack and buy an RV, you know, and put one of the girls through school. Well, the market tanked. The house was only worth 35, and they owed a bunch. And I bought the note for like 12 grand because it was only worth 35 at the time. And so I reached out to the borrower and said, listen, see what's going on here. You want to stay in the house. We'd like to keep in the house. Can you bring a little bit of the money to the table? I mean, we'd like you to bring 5 grand to the table if we're going to modify your loan for you. She's like, no, but I can bring 2,500 to the table. I'm like, okay. Can you make your existing payment of like $450 a month plus 200? And she's like, yeah. I said, okay, do that. And what we'll do, for every dollar, every penny you bring to the table, we're going to apply it towards principal. We're going to drop your interest rate to 0%.
Oh, wow.
So that every paying, you make a payment on time, we're going to drop from what you owe down to a market value of 35 grand. We're going to forgive a bonus debt because I'm not going to get it anyway, you know?
No.
And you'll have the house paid off in 6.5 years. Okay. She just paid off the house literally like 2 months ago.
Wow.
But 6 months into the deal, you know, I found out when she showed up at my attorney's office to sign paperwork, her husband was crying. And they had a daughter that was 21 was pregnant at the time. Like I said, 6 months after the deal, I get a letter from them in the mail. And they're like, thank you so much for helping us out of a bad situation. Our daughter had her son, and we named him Carson after you.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh, I don't have any kids that I know of. So those are the things that you love. I mean, you love helping people. Not everybody's a deadbeat borrower and meth. They're running a brothel out of their house. You know what I mean?
But that's great that you've done so many of those deals, and then you remember these little moments that where you've helped somebody greatly. That's
awesome. That is freaking awesome. That was good.
You know, there's we bought a note on a house where a lady had passed away, and her son, who was a little mentally challenged, was living in the basement. He was working at McDonald's and coming home at night and defecating in trash bags and pissing in milk containers, and we were starting like a small fire to stay warm, you know? And so we finally get into the house. We see all this stuff. It's a dumpster of, you know, crap and piss, you know, stuff like that. And you're like, oh, even the, you know, the health department was like, oh, this is a problem. You know, we remember stuff like that. You're like, ugh. I bought a note on a house in Salt Lake City where the borrowers had walked away from it, and it turned out to have the worst roach infestation in the county. Even the gut junk guys didn't want to deal with all the stuff.
Wow.
But, you know, there's every deal is different. Every deal is like kind of got its own choose your adventure kind of thing. You know,
we are aware.
Yeah, beware. I mean, that's the thing. You really need to know the different strategies in which way. There's sometimes that we think the borrowers are going to modify immediately because it's just stupid if they don't, and then it turns into a foreclosure, or things that we thought would be a foreclosure because there was no response to the bank. The borrowers finally show up and they modify immediately. So it's the thing is, you never know. You need a team. You need vendors to do this. If you try to do this on your own, you're going to end up losing your ass.
Yeah.
And you got to really surround yourself with good people and learn the right way of doing things.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, we want to wind it down. We appreciate that you came on the show, a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you give us like your social media handles and your website and everything like
Yeah, you want my social security number? No, I'm just joking. Easiest thing is just go to our website, weclosenotes.com. That's the main website. You can see our different podcasts and webinars that we do all the time. Or you can find me online at one Scott Carson on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter at one Scott Carson. But weclosenotes.com is our mothership where everything's at.
Okay.
There, check it out. And then that's the best way to connect with me there. Scott at weclosenotes.com.
Awesome.
No, man, we appreciate you being on the show. The wealth of knowledge we learned a whole bunch right
Yeah,
now.
Yes.
that was good.
Definitely had a good laugh. So.
That's the whole idea, man. You can't have fun. Come on now.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. All right,
You guys are doing a great job, man. I've
Thank you.
been listening to your show. Keep up the good work, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
For those listening, make sure you like, subscribe us. And also, we are looking for capital investors. So if you want to check us out on Facebook or any of our links in the show notes, hit us up if you're looking into investing some capital.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Batch skip services as well. So if you need skip tracing lists, all of that, go ahead and go to batchskiptracing.com, and some of the links are down below. Use code CNH and they will give you 15% off. Nice. Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
Mahalo.
Okay, so now we gotta go on his show.
Yep.
All right, let us know when you're ready.
All right.